am Suzanne LaGrande, and today on We Are All in This Together, I am speaking with Judy Berck, who is a freelance writer and has organized a group of strangers in Northeast Portland to design and make protective gowns, both for medical workers and also for people who are working with the homeless. So, could you tell us a little bit about this project of making protective gowns for people who are on the front lines?
Sure. It started with my becoming sick. Early on, March 11th, I had a sore throat, and then I developed a mild version of COVID with all the symptoms, and so did my family, and we quarantined. I spoke with my doctor's office every day to find out if testing was being expanded, and it wasn't. But that's how I learned that they had a PPE shortage there. My son, who is in high school as a maker, has a 3D printer, was looking at printing masks, but discovered that on his 3D printer it takes a long time. He went into the Dollar Tree store to look for large pieces of plastic that he could make some other model with. And he came home with a shower curtain liner that was made out of PIVA, which is a non-toxic plastic that's impermeable, waterproof. We had the idea of using them to make gowns, since masks aren't the only thing that are needed. And so I made a prototype gown just with 2 armholes and ties in the back out of a shower curtain liner, sleeves out of the shower curtain itself. It was not very good, and I knew I needed help. So I got on our Nextdoor group. We have a very active Nextdoor group in our neighborhoods in Northeast. And I asked for help with people who would be willing to sew, who had scissors or had sewing machines, or who would be willing to organize or run for supplies. And I got an incredible response right away. Basically, this turned into a group of about 10 people that we didn't know each other at all, but included 2 retired nurses who sew, and a rabbi, and several students, someone who works at Bonneville Power Administration. One of the people who responded offered her porch as a drop-off point, which I needed because I was quarantined and I couldn't do any of this work myself. But I could organize, and I could also work on the design and the instructions and do it all online. And so we got the group together. We got the 2 retired nurses on the phone who looked at my awful design and came up with a better design and started making those. And then my husband got quite sick, sicker than me, and started having chest pains, and we both had the cough. But finally, after 10 days, he was told to come in and take a test. And then because I lived with him, I was told to also take a test. So I went through Broadway Medical Clinic's new drive-through testing center and took my test, and meanwhile, waiting for the flu test results to come back, because they give you that first, and it takes 15 minutes, I asked the nurse who had given it to me how I could reach somebody who was the nurse manager or higher so I could talk to them about our gowns. And she said, well, that would be me. The head of quality at Broadway Medical Clinic was doing the testing. She said that they were very short, and it sounded like a very good idea. She also said they were working on a solution with a laundromat so that they could use fabric gowns that would be laundered, but that it hadn't come through yet. And they were quite nervous. I couldn't physically do any of it because I had symptoms. I couldn't go to Dollar Tree and get the supplies. I couldn't drop them off at the porch, and I couldn't sew them because I would contaminate them. But what I could do was organize everyone online, figure out who needed to do what, how many people had scissors and could cut out sleeves and tunics, and how many people had sewing machines and could sew them into the completed gowns. I just needed someone's porch and a bunch of boxes so that people would have a safe place to drop off and pick everything up. And then we delivered our first batch of 18 gowns to them, and then they were able to secure a solution through the laundromat. Meanwhile, we learned that one of the women in the group had a contact at Central City Concern who said that they had nothing, and their outreach workers were going out and dealing with the most vulnerable people on the streets, and they had nothing to protect them. So they're on the front lines also, but had no access to personal protective equipment. And so our next batch went to them of 22, and then I just delivered 10 to a group called Free Hot Soup, which is an ad hoc group of people that serve meals to the homeless at Director Park and have been doing that for over a year. And they're still serving food, and they're handing out bags with peanut butter and jelly. And people really need food, and they have no way to get it. But these workers also had no protection, and so we delivered gowns to them.
Since you started doing this with this group of people, what have you learned about the need for PPE in, say, Portland?
The medical community here is getting on top of this. I think that they are finding some solutions, and they also are not as open to anything homemade as they were, say, 10 days ago. So I think that the medical community is in a little bit better shape, but the community of people that do outreach to the homeless is not in better shape. I've heard about the need at places like Central City Concern, and also Transition Projects is another one that I've heard is in really dire need. And so we're going to continue our efforts with that. My perspective has changed a bit. At first, because we've been doing this almost 2 weeks now, at first I was worried that we would quickly run out of shower curtain liners and shower curtains at Dollar Tree stores, because we were basically, our organizers were going in and with donated money and buying up as many as they could. And at the same time, we were making the instructions better and had redesigned the gown to be better and smaller. And then finally, I started getting requests for the instructions, and I was asking group members whether we should just publish them online and get them out if we were ready for that. And there's a rabbi in the group, and I asked what he thought, and he said, "This isn't ours. It's not our problem. This is everybody's problem to solve together." We decided to go public, but I needed to finalize the instructions, and so I stopped sewing the gowns myself and just worked on the instruction set and illustrations and testing it and having other people test it until it was perfect. And I discovered through Facebook that there are all kinds of new ad hoc COVID-19 maker groups that are international, and realized it would be very simple to distribute this worldwide to other people who wanted to make gowns. Once it was ready, it only took about 20 minutes for me to upload the file to a whole bunch of different groups all around the world. So now there's an instruction set, and it includes a picture of me without my head, just my body wearing a gown. The instructions are out there, and people have been asking for them and downloading them. So now hopefully gowns are being made all over the world. They're very simple to make, just require a straight line on a sewing machine and not any more skill than that.
What have you learned in this couple of weeks since you started this project? Has anything surprised you?
I wouldn't say I was surprised because I've already known this about people, but when I put the request out on Nextdoor, people stepped up. There's so many people who are good at heart, who want to help, and who will just jump in when needed. A lot of the people who responded weren't sure they could do it, but were willing to, and if they couldn't do it, they were willing to donate money, or they were willing to get supplies, or to drop things off on the porch, or to organize. People have a wellspring that can be tapped in times like this, and I was very happy to see that response.
What do you hope might come out of this situation?
I've been really moved by the heart that people show, both at the local level and around the world, that even when our leaders are demonstrating complete incompetence in so many regards with this crisis, there are communities of people, both locally and around the world, that are creative, resourceful, energetic, and are willing to tackle this problem. Everyone from high-tech 3D printer groups around the world to people with a pair of scissors who are willing to get a cheap shower curtain and make it into something useful. Communities, really meaningful communities, can spring up under the most unlikely circumstances. I feel very close to these people who I've never actually been able to see more than a glimpse of from my car. Experiences like this can bring out the best in people and also create communities, and we're planning to have one big party at a local restaurant as soon as we're all cleared to do so.
I've been talking today with Judy Berck, who is a freelance writer and also has organized a group of people in Northeast Portland to make and distribute protective clothing, both to medical workers and also people who are working with the homeless.